Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. I know you're probably wrapping up your lunch here, but we're going to go ahead and get started with our afternoon sessions here. We have three really great speakers lined up to share some of the work they're doing. Before we get started, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank the people who prepared the food for us today. If we could do that. So thank you all, and just the accommodations have been really nice. If there's anybody in the room that's working today, we appreciate you, so thank you for that. I also wanted to do, just as a matter of protocol of something that I've learned from my elders, and I think is relevant for us here too, is to acknowledge the original people of this land, the Chinook people and all of their descendants, because as we might know, they're the first practitioners of what today might be called IPM. They're the first fishers, farmers, food gatherers, first scientists, right? And so I think it's important as we carry forth this work to understand that there are other people on this land that we're blessed to be able to be on today who also understand these things that we're working towards. My name is Brett Ramey, and I'm on the board of directors for Beyond Pesticides. Very fortunate to be. I currently live up in Seattle and work at the School of Medicine and the Center for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at the University of Washington School of Medicine there. And so my first honor to introduce to you is Michael Sligh. He's a founding member of RAFI, or RAFI, apparently it can be pronounced either way, I was informed. RAFI USA, which is a Rural Advancement Foundation International, where he manages policy, research, and education regarding agricultural best practices, biodiversity, biotechnology, organic identity preservation, and other hosts of food justice-related issues. He's been doing so for more than 30 years as both a policy analyst, both domestically and internationally. He's also the founding chair of the USDA National Organic Standards Board, which is pretty amazing, I think, that we get to have the founder here with us. He's also the founder of the Southern Sustainable Agricultural Working Group, founder of National Organic Coalition, founding partner of Agricultural Justice Project, and founding member of Domestic Fair Trade Association. He's also a part-time family farmer and is currently the director for the Just Foods program, and he lives and farms in North Carolina. So if you'll join me in welcoming Michael Sligh.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. It's a little dangerous asking a Southern boy to come preach at lunchtime. We're a little slow to get started, and we're a lot slower to finish up. So heads up on that. I will watch my time. I am honored to be here, and I've been a big supporter of this idea of Beyond Pesticides for a long time, and we've worked with Jay and many of you, Fred, and I see George and many people here that we've worked to try to build and hold together and nurture this food movement, just food movement, one that can be good for workers, it can be good for farmers, it can be good for all of us, and it can be good for the planet. And I think that we have to recognize that a couple of themes have come up this morning. That one is that it's the impossible. So in many ways, we're not supposed to be here. We were not supposed to make this progress. This was impossible. And secondly, I heard Kim talk this morning about the need to break down our silos and reach out across movements and build across movements and across sectors, and how important that is, that isolation is probably one of our most dangerous elements, that we need to really reach out. And then I also heard that maybe part of what I'm involved in is preventative medicine. And so I was glad to know that, and it kind of made me feel good about that. And so I'm going to tell a little history. I'm going to tell a little bit about a couple of projects you may not know about that I think this community needs to know about and to be a part of. So really, RAFI traces its roots back to the 1930s, when America was again in a rural crisis, and mostly because of bad policies and bad practices. And so Eleanor Roosevelt and a number of dignitaries organized the National Sharecroppers Fund to address the abuses of farmers and workers who worked the land but did not own the land. And we've tried to follow in that tradition of working for justice, equity, and sustainability in agriculture. And it was clear to us, you know, that it's not enough to save a family farm. You have to save them for something good to do. And they have to be able to make a living at it. And they have to be able to find a connection with the consumers that want to buy their product. And so I think, you know, there's two very powerful things all of us can do to change our food system. And one of them is in our buying preferences. Every day, what we buy, we're determining the future of our food system. And so what we're tapping into here is this growing hunger by the informed public that wants to know not only where does their food come from, but who grew it and how they grew it, but also increasingly wanting to know how the farmers and workers were treated in growing that food. And so that's a very important and powerful connection that we have an opportunity to tap into and help pull through the marketplace. At RAFI, we look at three things in trying to think about how to change agriculture. We think about what are the right practices, what are the markets that draw those right practices and reward them, and then, of course, are there policies that can encourage and support that direction. Organic is a good example of when those three factors are in alignment, you can have it take off. And it's quite important that we know in many cases, like the example of GMO, you've got a lot of policy and you have a lot of practice, but you've got no consumer support. And that's in our favor because we're not choosing that, and the more we don't choose that, the more that will go away, because the more we reward something, the more we can grow it. So I got into this really because I was a family farmer in the 1970s, and I was a part of the Earl Butz era, where we were all told to get big or get out and to go fence row to fence row, and if we weren't making any money, it was because we needed a bigger truck. And, you know, the Green Revolution was to solve it. You just needed more pesticides. You just needed more fertilizer. That was, the sky was the limit, and it was just, you know, prices were high, land was high, but it turned out it was a bubble, just like the urban bubble we just had, where hundreds of thousands of small family farmers were put out of business. I myself did not drink the Kool-Aid and had decided that maybe organic agriculture was the right thing to do, and I had pursued organic agriculture during that period of time. And so when the foreclosures happened, it did not affect our farm or our family farm out in West Texas. We were lucky. My grandfather didn't believe in borrowing money to farm. So there were those who avoided that crisis, but I thought I would take a short break from farming and go fix the policy problem, because in West Texas, what we thought was that the problem was that it was just plain ass backwards. We were encouraging farmers to do the wrong thing, and we were penalizing them for doing the right thing. Here we were with these organic farmers, they were being penalized, and here was this other direction, and we were just throwing money at it as fast as possible. And so I thought I'd just fix that and get right back to farming. And I have a small farm on the side, but it's more around the really therapy than it is a money-making activity yet. Maybe when I retire, I can go back to that, but I haven't discovered it. But I mean, I think it's important to realize that we're embedded in a very predatory food system, and that farmers are pitted against the buyers, and the workers are pitted against the farmers, and the buyers are pitted against the retailers, and you're pitted against the retailers. It's a very predatory system. It's not predatory by accident. And that is the issue that we're trying to address. And certainly I show this because clearly a lot of time people go to the grocery store and they say, well, I don't understand. It seems like the price of food keeps going up. Surely these farmers are making a lot of money. What's the problem here? But, you know, clearly here's an Auburn University graph that we've been following over the decades. It continues to show the disconnect between farmer pay price and the price in the grocery store. So we thought, well, we can grow organic, and that will be the sane alternative to agribusiness as usual. And many of us who gave the bloom of our youth to the development of organic, and we think that we have much to be proud of there, and that is our base. that we need to build upon. One of the things that we could not get in the federal organic legislation, we could get in language to protect the earthworms, to protect the bees, to protect the water, the air, the soil, but we could not get the language in there to protect the people. And in the grassroots worldwide, organic has always been a holistic approach to agriculture. It does include fairness. It does include the people. Now, the fact that our relationship with USDA has been a shotgun marriage, really, from day one, Jay, really. And we're in constant marriage counseling. And Jay has now earned his red badge of courage, and we thank you for all of your extra lifts on this issue. Thank you very much. But just know every administration has attempted to undermine the organic rule. They do not want to manage it. It does require us to constantly defend the turf we have won. We cannot get complacent. We must continue to defend it, but we also have to grow the ethic. We have to add back the parts of organic that we were not able to do within the federal rule. Now, in a rational world, we would have policies that address fairness at the national and international level. But obviously, we well know we're not in a rational world at the moment. So one of the things that we decided to do was to work with 4 other really good and diverse organizations. About 1999, when the federal rule went through on organic, we said, okay, so we didn't get the fairness part in there. Let's go add it on in the marketplace. Let's see if we can pull this through. And so we worked with Nelson at Kata, and we worked with Marty Mesh with the Organic Farmers, and with Liz Henderson with the Northeast Organic Farmers Association, and one of our partners in Bolivia, the Indigenous Farmers Association, to sit down and say, well, if we were to add justice onto organic, what would it need to look like? What would be included in that? What are the problems that we're all facing as farmers and as workers and as buyers? What are those problems? What would those standards look like? And so we decided, again, from a perspective of impossibility, let's go figure out what those standards will be. Let's try to create those standards. Let's go test them in the marketplace and see if we can add that on to those farms willing to take that risk and to stick their neck out. So we know some of the bigger macro background that has been a dynamic that is important at this time as to why we need to add justice on. We know that in the federal law, there's nothing in there that really addresses fair prices to farmers. It is not there. We have some small organic dairies now going out in the Northeast. That's not right. What are we doing wrong if organic dairies are going out of business? We also know that the market is concentrated. We also know that working conditions in general for farm workers or for processing workers or even retailer workers to many extent are left out of the organic standard. We know that we don't have public policy to support this, and we know that there's growing interest on the part of consumers to want this, and we also know that there's businesses that are wanting to know, how do we differentiate? I've got organic down, now what? What do I do now? I want a new challenge. And so we're hearing that, and those are all positive signs that we're trying to take advantage of. We have much to be proud of in organic. It's up to $60 billion in sales globally now. Something that was supposed to be impossible. Fred, I mean, we were told how many years in a row was it impossible? Would you just stop doing this? This is impossible, you can't do it. Well, here we are doing it. We're also seeing continued growth in fair trade. These are the 2 fastest growing parts of the agriculture sector worldwide. And we also are seeing a number of ethical claims come into the marketplace. Looking at consumer studies, we're now seeing fair living wages for workers, right up there with pollution reduction in terms of consumer attitudes toward their food. This is a very promising sign that we need to take advantage of. But we also continue to see a lot of very bad news about what is going on in agricultural labor in America. It's important to remember that the U.S. and China are the two major countries in the world who have not signed on to hardly any of the international labor treaties. Europe, many of the other parts of the world have signed on to these. We don't even have it on the books, okay? So this idea of the farmers and the workers coming to us and saying, well, I hear about all this, fair trade coffee, all that, that's great, but what about here? What about fairness for workers here? What about fairness for farmers here? How do we bring fair trade home? And what would it look like in a domestic setting? We have a very sophisticated marketplace here. Customer expectation is very, very high. So we knew right off the bat, if we were to create something that could work here, it had to be sophisticated and it had to have the allowance to address the whole supply chain. So the other thing that we saw that was missing collectively was there was no, I'm from West Texas, there was no watering hole. There was no place for businesses and workers and farmers and nonprofits to come together and sit down at a table as equals and say, how do we do this? How do we have domestic fair trade? And what the heck is it? So many of us helped form the Domestic Fair Trade Association. We have Colette here. Raise your hand, Colette. Our new executive director of the Domestic Fair Trade Association. The environmental community should know the Domestic Fair Trade Association. They are your ally. You should ask her, how can you get involved? And she should ask you, how can she get involved with your issues? We are of the same movement. We are from the same side of the river. And so the Domestic Fair Trade Association is really trying to do two things, much like we have to do in organic. We're trying to promote domestic fair trade, but we're also trying to protect the integrity of fair trade, because the United States is the biggest market in the world for fair trade. We get all these products coming in from all over the world, all of different standards, all of different claims. We're trying to also parse out those claims in a way to help educate consumers so you can make a more informed choice. Because to the level you are informed, that's what you're going to be really pulling through the marketplace. So just as you want to vote for certified organic, you want to vote for these things that are fair trade, that are making a difference in the lives of workers and farmers. So I would suggest you go to the Domestic Fair Trade Association website. They are now in the process of evaluating market claims for fairness, and we'll be doing that on an ongoing basis, similar to what the Consumers Union does for toasters. The Domestic Fair Trade is trying to do that for what is fair trade. I think that'll be a valuable contribution to our movement. These are some of the principles that the Domestic Fair Trade Association is using to measure these different claims in the marketplace. We're obviously don't include GMOs. We're opposed to toxic chemicals. We're in favor of family farming. We're in favor of the rights of workers and farmers. We're your kind of people. Focusing on three activities. We want to build community. The workers, the farmers, the companies, we are all been, told that we are each other's enemies. And so we're trying to break down those barriers and have workers sitting with CEOs of progressive businesses and farmers sitting there and the NGO community sitting there and talking about how do we make this happen? How do we make the impossible happen here in North America? We want to defend the principles, and we also want to do this consumer education. So some of the current members of the association, we certainly want to grow this just like everyone else. But we also needed some kind of labels to inspire us in the marketplace. So again, the Agricultural Justice Project which was made up of farm workers and farmers and advocates and indigenous farm organizations, we went on a journey that we started in 1999, and we spent about 6 or 7 years going to forums that we hosted around the world, bringing diverse stakeholders together. We were in Thailand, we were in Australia, we were in Uruguay, we were all over listening to stakeholders to say, so tell us what these problems are. Tell us what we need to do if we're going to make a claim like this. What would it need to do to have validity for you? So we wanted something that would be internationally compatible, but also would be appropriate in a North American setting. Because keep in mind, much like the pesticide issue, we don't have a lot on the books. And what is on the books is not enforced very well. Sound familiar? Yeah. Well, that's where we are in agricultural justice. Not on the books, and what's on the books, not very well. So if we were developing standards, we had to cover off all of that missing territory. So we went all around listening to people. We wanted to hear what was working, what was not working, what's the problems with fair trade, what's the problems with organic, what is missing that we need to add. And so eventually we settled, we went through 6 rounds of standard setting at the international level, where we kept refining them, getting feedback, kept refining them. And so we came up with this body of standards that we now have taken into the marketplace. We have tested them and are now beginning to label this in the North American market. So obviously, it's important to be holistic. We even include standards for interns, because we heard from a lot of interns in organic farms that they didn't feel exactly like they were learning what they were supposed to learn. Maybe it was just they learned which end of the hoe to use. And that's good, but that's not exactly a full education if you're trying to be an intern to become an organic farmer. So we didn't want to miss a lick. We wanted to cover the interns, we wanted to cover the children, we wanted to cover the farmers. But we also wanted to say that all of these have responsibilities as well. It's not just about rights, it's also about responsibilities. So everybody has to have responsibilities. This is about shining a bright light on the dark parts of our food system. We also heard very loudly that don't go out there and create a new certification system. For God's sake, we have plenty of certifiers. We have plenty of inspectors. Just train the ones who are already doing the organic inspection and just add it on. So that's the model that we've taken. We are completely transparent. We have advisory groups. We have standards committee. We publish it all. It's all on the website. Down here at the bottom, I don't know how to make that thing go. I'm afraid to touch anything, but we have our first agricultural justice certified organic strawberry farm in California. 35 workers. We're working on the first agricultural justice certified food hub in New York City. We're working with a group of small organic farmers selling back to their food co-op in the Northeast. We also do a great deal of education, because we realized that one of the biggest barriers that we learned in organic was that you needed to build a runway to get the farmers to go there. So they needed tools to become an organic farmer. So we're trying to develop in a website approach the tools that a farm, a business, farm workers would need to make this direction and to make it more swiftly. So we offer these different kinds of services. We also have 75 farms in Canada that are organic grain farmers that are now selling into 60 Whole Food stores across America with the AJP symbol. So we're just at the beginning of this. So what we're asking for you is to go to the bulk bins at Whole Foods and look for AJP and buy some of it. And tell them you think this is a good idea. This is how we grew organic. I mean, there was plenty of time when I had organic produce and I didn't have a place to sell it. We have to have a place to sell this. If we want to pull this through, we have to have a place to sell it. And so we have the food co-ops, we have some restaurants, we have food hubs, we have Whole Foods. They're willing to back this, but we have to have the customers go there. You also need to go to your favorite brand of organic and say, how come you're not adding social justice onto your claim? There are a number of companies that are a perfect profile for this. It's not too late to get it right. So we know from a bigger picture point of view that just the marketplace alone will not be sufficient. We know we have to address bigger issues like campaign finance reform. You know, Jim Hightower tells us that if gods wanted us to vote, then they would have sent us candidates. And Churchill said that democracy is the worst form of government in the world, except for all the rest. But it should not be that democracy is the best democracy that money can buy. We know we have to address that issue if we're going to turn the ass backward process back around. And I would just say in closing that farm workers can't have justice if farmers don't have justice. And neither can they have justice unless the enlightened self-interest of the rest of us supports that direction. And I also would say that I do not believe we can get to the shores of sustainability on environmental stewardship alone. We must have justice. That is the fuel that will drive this to the next generation. So I don't think it's too late to get it right, and if we can work together, I think we can make it so. Thank you.